Thanks and welcome back to a brand new series of Crimewatch Roadshow Live.
It's Monday the 7th of September and although these are uncertain times, one thing we can be sure of is that the police still need your help to catch criminals. So stay with us to see if your call could be the one that makes the difference today.
This is Crimewatch Roadshow Live.
The show where you join the fight against crime. Will you have the vital information police need to crack a case? Your call could be what it takes to put a criminal behind bars.
And I'll be finding out how police forces are tackling crime where you live.
It's time to catch some crooks.
Hello and welcome to the programme which tackles the crimes that matter where you live. With me in the studio is Michelle Ackley.
It's good to be here, Rav, and great to be back for a brand new series. Now, over the next 3 weeks, we'll be bringing you the very latest police appeals, news and some incredible stories from the teams on the front lines who are making a huge difference in getting their communities through some tough times.
And although they're not here in the studio with us because of social distancing, rest assured our teams are still manning the phone lines this morning, waiting to see if you can help the police crack unsolved crimes from around the UK. So let's see what's coming up today. A father knifed to death by an intruder. Today, his daughter makes an emotional plea for answers.
He was the person I loved the most in my life. I think if the person responsible was caught, it would be like closure in a way.
The ruthless carjacking gang who targeted a pregnant woman.
And they risk their lives to protect us, but what happens to officers when they are injured in the line of duty? We go behind the scenes at the UK's oldest police rehabilitation centre.
The job of a police officer can be really mentally and physically demanding, so having a dedicated resource like this is hugely important.
Stay with us for all that and more.
Also with us this morning and across the next 3 weeks is our new roving reporter and fellow former police officer John Paul Davis. Let's find out what he's got in store for us today. And John Paul, welcome to the programme.
Oh, thanks very much for the welcome, both. It's really good to be with you. And over the course of the next 3 weeks, I'll be bringing you stories from the length and breadth of the UK, from behind the cordon appeals to those policing heroes going the extra mile for their communities. And we're starting here in Staffordshire. And whilst it might look like a tranquil scene this morning, back in June, it was anything but. Join me later to find out why.
First, though, this morning, detectives in Merseyside are asking for your help with a tragic murder. 10 years ago, chef and devoted dad Colin Hughes was killed in Liverpool. Today, his daughter is making a direct appeal to anyone who can help police finally get justice for her father. "42-year-old father of two, Colin Hughes, was a popular man in his community.
Very extroverted. He knew everyone. He was very, very funny. He had a very good sense of humour. He was good at making people laugh, making people feel at ease. He was very kind. He really did care about people. He looked after people around him.
He worked as a chef in a local pub called the Old Swan, which was locally known as the White House, and he'd worked there for some time, so he was really well known.
He loved working in the pub. He loved cooking. He was very, very good at it.
On the evening of the 20th of September 2010, Colin was on shift at the pub.
He'd been working extensively all over the weekend, and about 8 p.m. he finished work. We made arrangements with his girlfriend to go home to Baden Road. It's probably less than a mile from the pub. She let him in at the rear of her house because he'd lost his keys a few days before.
Not long after he arrived home, Colin went outside to speak to someone.
Around 8:30, Colin came back out, had a conversation with somebody or some people in a car. It was a dark coloured hatchback car.
For the next few hours, Colin and his fiancée relaxed and played cards. But as they enjoyed their quiet evening together, someone was approaching the house. As his fiancée called the police, Colin made his way through the kitchen towards the back door. The intruder stabbed Colin and fled. Colin died from a single stab wound to his chest.
And I didn't finally understand exactly what happened.
Such a dreadful thing, and as we heard, 10 years on, the family really are desperate to know why this happened. Joining me now by video call is DCI Mark Baker from Merseyside Police. Mark, good morning. We mentioned it's been 10 years. Just remind us when and where this happened.
Good morning. Yes, this happened 21st of September 2010, 10 years ago, as you said. This happened at about 10 to 1 in the Old Swan area of Liverpool on Baden Road, as you can see on the map now. Baden Road runs off Prescott Road, which is the main thoroughfare through the Old Swan area. Colin was fatally stabbed through the heart.
Now, for people watching, it might seem like a long time has passed since the murder, but you are clear, you are not giving up on this until that killer is brought to justice.
Yes, that's right. We're equally determined as we are. We were 10 years ago, we are today, to bring offenders to justice. This was a horrendous murder. He was stabbed in front of his girlfriend. Dreadful, dreadful crime. We know that people in the community know what's happened. We're hoping with the passage of time, allegiances will have changed in the community. People grow up, relationships change. This morning, we're appealing for anybody to come forward with any information to assist our investigation.
How much do you know about the person who stabbed Colin?
Witnesses described the male as being about 5'10", tall, slim build. He was wearing the dark-coloured black nylon tracksuit.
Talk us through the route that you believe the person took to and from Colin's partner's house, because that's important as well.
Yes, this is really important. We believe that the person responsible has come through an alleyway that runs parallel to Baden Road. We know that that area is alligated, therefore the offender must have had a key or climbed over the wall. We're particularly interested in vehicles that may well have been circling the area between 12:30 and 1 o'clock in the morning, believing that potentially more than one person was involved in this.
And there's another vehicle potentially of interest as well. There's someone that Colin popped out to talk to that was in a car that night. You're trying to identify that person as well?
Yes, that's right. It's about 8:30. We know that Colin went on to Baden Road. We know that he's had a very, very brief conversation with the occupants of a dark-coloured hatchback car. We know from some CCTV that it was only a very short conversation. We're desperate to try and identify who that was.
OK, Mark, thank you. Of course, as well as contacting us here in the studio, Merseyside Police also have a dedicated incident room. That number is 0151 777 8449. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. If you can help, do the right thing. Get in touch now. You can call us here in the studio. Our number is 08000 468 999. Remember, it's free from landlines and mobile phones. The phone line's going to be open from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. every weekday morning, and that's for the next 3 weeks. Don't forget, you can also text us. That's the number there, 63399. Text the word crime, leave a space, and then write your message. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. And, of course, you can email us as well. That's the address, cwr@bbc.co.uk.
The weeks before the arrival of a new baby should be a special time for any parents, but one couple from the West Midlands were left fearing for their lives when they became victims of a violent carjacking just days before the mum was due to give birth. PC Jamie Bunting joins me now. This is a really shocking case, isn't it? What can you tell us?
So on the 28th of May this year, the couple have been to appointment at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. They've left the location in their VW estate. We believe they've been followed by a white Renault Clio to their home address in Kings Norton in Birmingham. They arrive at the property around 3:15 in the afternoon, and this is when the gang have struck.
And Jamie, you've got some footage that you can show us today, haven't you? Just talk us through what we're seeing.
Yes, as you can see, 4 males arrive in the white Renault Clio. 3 males then run up towards the driver who's getting out of the vehicle. He's punched repeatedly, numerous times. Fearing for his life, he throws the keys. The victim ends up falling to the floor, where he's kicked and punched repeatedly. They then go round to the passenger, who's 39 weeks pregnant, and force her out of the vehicle. 2 males then get into the Volkswagen R estate, and 1 male gets in the Renault Clio, then leave the location in convoy.
It's horrifying, and as we can see, all in broad daylight as well. The getaway car, that was quite distinctive, wasn't it?
Yes, so this has a distinctive panoramic black sunroof. This is unique for its make and model. We know this car was stolen on the 12th of April in a car key burglary in Birmingham, Staffordshire. We would like to hear from anyone who may have seen this between the 12th of April and the 28th of May. Has this vehicle been parked in your street? Do you know who's been driving this vehicle?
And what about the couple's car, Jamie? Has that been recovered?
So no, the couple's car has not yet been recovered, but we know it's a VW Estate R in grey, displaying registration Victor Alpha 16, Lima Foxtrot Juliet. In the car were numerous valuable items, including a maxi cosy baby seat, which the couple needed days after for their newborn baby. We would like to hear from anyone who may have seen this vehicle after the offence.
And we've just heard how horrific this attack was for the couple. How are they doing now?
So the male went to hospital and received multiple stitches to a laceration of his head and ear. He's suffered extensive and significant bruising over his body and also broken fingers. The female was treated for extremely high blood pressure due to the fact that she was 39 weeks pregnant. We thankfully can say she gave birth to a healthy baby. We would like to hear from anyone who had seen this gang, who recognised them. This is a significant, horrific crime. Please let us know if you have any details to assist our inquiries.
Absolutely, Jamie, thank you so much. If you do recognise any of these men or have seen either of those cars, do get in touch using the numbers on the screen. Just to mention as well, we are having a few issues with our phone lines. Please bear with us, because we'll make sure we get that sorted as soon as possible. Raf.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, it really is truly horrific, that crime. Definitely get in touch if you can help. Right, lots more to come this morning, including... we reveal the handwritten note that could unlock the identity of this suspected bank robber.
And we're out with the teams tackling a worrying rise in domestic abuse.
There's been some sort of verbal altercation which has ended up in him being assaulted. Something about him being threatened with some scissors as well.
Next, though, to Staffordshire, where John Paul's been finding out about just one of the many challenges police across the country have been facing during lockdown.
Now, these woods in Lichfield in Staffordshire are peaceful this morning, but it was a very different story back in June when more than 1,000 revellers arrived here and trashed the place in what is known as an illegal rave. Now, it's not a new problem, but it is one that has surged during lockdown, what with festivals being cancelled and indoor venues being closed. Well, I'm joined now by the man who is tasked with tackling this problem for Staffordshire Police, and that is Chief Superintendent Carl Ratcliffe. Good morning to you, Carl.
Morning, John.
Yeah, first of all, just explain to us what an illegal rave is.
OK, so an illegal rave is a large gathering of people, often in the open air, such as areas like this. They occur overnight. And predominantly people attend for music to be played. However, they aren't fun parties, they are dangerous places to be and often arranged by organised criminality.
Yeah, just describe why they are such a big problem.
Well, for those attending, first of all, as I've said, these are dangerous and remote places to have to walk to. So very often, as in this case, they were walking down railway lines, across dual carriageways, down unlit country roads. So really, really dangerous places to access. Secondly, alcohol and drugs are misused at events like this, and we saw this happen on this occasion down in Lichfield. In terms of police resources, I have to dedicate a significant amount of resource to events like this and take them away from normal policing activity, and that just isn't acceptable in the current climate. And last but not least, the effect that it has on the community.
And plenty of your officers had to come here that night in the early hours. Just describe the scene that they were met with.
Yeah, John, it was carnage. There was over 1,000 people crammed into this tight area. They had to close roads to ensure that people were kept safe. They also had to render medical attention to people that had obviously taken excessive amount of alcohol or drugs. And call ambulances to the scene. Those people were abandoned by the friends, and that is never acceptable at a time like this.
And what was it like here the morning after?
Well, John, the impact was significant for the local community. There was rubbish, broken glass, evidence of drugs misuse strewn all over this area that you can see now, and it took a significant amount of time and effort for the local community to clear that up. And even this morning you can still see signs of that rubbish still here, so a lot of expense and time incurred in putting it right.
And yeah, an incredible scene that was met with those guys here. And I suppose it's something that the police need help to deal with. And over the last couple of weeks, we understand new legislation has been passed to do just that.
That's right, and we're really grateful for that legislation because it's given us another string to the bow. So what that legislation says is that you cannot have an unplanned and unorganised event such as a rave. If you organise one or facilitate one, then you will be fined £10,000. So my plea to the public is, please, if you are aware of an event like this taking place, please contact your local police and here in Staffordshire by ringing 101 and let us know it's happening.
All right, Carl, thanks very much for your time this morning. So the message there quite clear. If you're thinking of organising or attending an illegal rave, it's just not worth it.
As we've just heard, officers in England have new powers to fine organisers of illegal gatherings. Now, someone who's been heavily involved in managing the difficult task of keeping order during lockdown is Assistant Chief Constable Nick Bailey of Greater Manchester Police, who joins us now via video call. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Now, I have to say, the rules and boundaries of lockdown do vary from area to area, and it can be quite confusing. What would you say to people who say they just don't know what the rules are?
Yeah, I would say that go on the gov.uk website, see what that says around the activities you want to do. But more particular to Greater Manchester, I would say go on your local authority website. They have the individual legislation for your area. And very important that you understand what happens in your area.
Yeah, absolutely. OK. Now, interesting, you're working with Border Force to police people who are failing to self-quarantine after returning from abroad. Tell us about that.
Yes, we receive calls from Border Force where there are suspicions or they've been unable to speak to individuals who should be quarantining at home. And our officers are doing home visits on those individuals to make sure that they are quarantining and isolating. That's across Greater Manchester, so people who have arrived from those countries where the restrictions apply.
Now, the pandemic has obviously put a huge amount of additional pressure on your officers. What have the toughest things been for them?
Yeah, very much so. What we've seen over the last maybe 10 weeks, just short of 3 months, is that once we came out of full lockdown, how this has manifested itself for policing, we've seen the protests from Black Lives Matter, we've seen the unlicensed music events, and all of these have required additional resources on top of what is becoming normal business as usual in terms of policing. So what we've seen over the last 10 weeks is officers having rest days cancelled on weekends. We've seen mutual aid coming in from different forces across Greater Manchester, just so that we can provide the right response to the public of Greater Manchester and keep them safe during this pandemic.
I know it's been incredibly tough, but if anyone is feeling frustrated with lockdown, thinking it doesn't matter to them, or why should they bother, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm perfectly aware, working with the local authorities, with health partners, that this infection, as it currently stands, is hitting the working population. It's infecting a younger generation. And my message to them is, actually, if you don't think it's a concern for yourself, think of what you can do for the rest of your community in terms of, understanding the rules, making sure you engage with the rules, making sure that you follow those social distancing things, washing hands, sanitising, that can keep the whole population safe. Thank you.
Very, very well said. Thank you, Nick, and do please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Just an update on our phone lines. They're now up and running again, so please do call if you have information on any of today's cases. The number is on your screen now. Next, we've been spending time with officers in Lancashire, where a new police operation is aiming to help victims of domestic abuse, a crime which has seen such an alarming rise during lockdown. In March, the government announced an unprecedented change to our way of life.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
But with reports of domestic abuse on the rise across the country, for some people, home was one of the most dangerous places they could be. Here in Lancashire, there's been a 20% increase in incidents of domestic abuse. In response, police launched Operation Provide to try and support victims trapped with their abuser during lockdown.
The COVID pandemic got us thinking about how we reach out to victims who may feel trapped. Immediately after the restrictions came into place, we saw a little dip, but very quickly a rise in incidents being reported to us.
Under the new scheme, NHS specialists like Claire Bennett accompany officers on domestic abuse call-outs to give victims additional support. Today, she's on shift with PC Riz Darla.
Yesterday, the females called and reported an assault. So we've gone round today to do a follow-up visit. When we attend with the officers, we are able to put our sort of expertise to that victim straight away.
The females moved to this address after another domestic-related incident. The offender has followed her here, and there's been some sort of altercation which has gone on and it's escalated.
This offender is now wanted for these assaults, so as soon as we can find him, she can return home. The victim in this case is going to receive ongoing support in terms of attending court with her, making the property secure and looking at civil orders to keep her safe.
Even before lockdown, officers in Blackpool were attending an average of 19 domestic abuse call-outs every day.
When I was young, we'd always come to Blackpool for a day out, and I didn't realise until I started working here, the other side of Blackpool, quite a lot of rundown areas, a lot of unemployed, homelessness. It's like a side of Blackpool I never knew existed.
And it's not long before the team are off to follow up on another case, this time from a male victim.
Yesterday, a male has called and saying he's been assaulted by a female, which is his partner. So we're just going to go over and just see if we can offer any more assistance. There's been some sort of verbal altercation which has ended up in him being assaulted. I think the log mentions something about him being threatened with some scissors as well.
Domestic abuse charity Mankind has also seen a 35% increase of calls from men or people close to them during lockdown.
He's now at a place of safety. There's some property that he still wants from the address, so we're going to go and try and get his passport for him.
For victims, the help offered by Claire and the team could be a vital lifeline. Jennifer was abused by her husband for more than 10 years. She thinks this kind of support would have helped her at the time.
If it had been around when I was going through my experience, I think I would have been able to leave sooner. There would have been someone there to steer me in the right direction. Abuse became part of life for me. I was expected to be humiliated, screamed at, shouted at. It progressed to him wanting to know where I was all the time. There were cameras on the front and back of the house where we lived, so he knew when I'd go out. It gets ingrained that you are worthless, that you're disgusting, no one would ever want you. And I thought, I can't cope with this. I didn't want to be here anymore. You wouldn't think, looking in the house, what was going on.
Jennifer was able to escape her abuser with the help of Women's Aid here in Blackpool. The charity works closely with police on Operation Provide and also run other key services, from refuges to drop-in sessions. But the pandemic has forced them to adapt as well.
Since lockdown, we've had to change the way that we work and get quite creative in the ways that we stay in contact with people. Something completely new is our online chat service. During lockdown, it's often not safe for people to make contact with our service over the phone due to potentially isolating with the abuser. So this chat is a really good, discreet and effective way of people reaching out for that support. I had a service user make contact with us. She disclosed that the abuser had actually killed the family pet and she was worried that she was next. We've made plans for her to leave safely and also to obtain protective orders. There is help out there. Lots of people think that this is something that they have to deal with alone or keep behind closed doors, but that's not the case.
It's 10 p.m, and as night draws in, Claire and PC Darla are responding to an emergency call.
They're saying that they can hear male and female voices, a lot of screaming and arguing from an address.
It's a known domestic abuse address, and the female was known to be pregnant.
The male that's been named is somebody who's wanted for breaching a court order, so therefore he's been put in cuffs straight away. While we were doing that, he decided to start kicking off with us. He was then further arrested when he was on the floor resisting for racially abusing me.
I think each person has a time when they know it's time to say something about the abuse. We might try and do a revisit with her tomorrow while he's still in custody to see if anything changes. The abuse doesn't stop, so we just carry on doing what we're doing to try and tackle the long-standing issue of domestic abuse.
It's such a great scheme, but it is still really scary to think of those people trapped in abusive relationships at what was already a really tough time.
Yeah, and it's not an isolated incident either. This is something that happens nationwide, with some charities reporting up to an 80% increase of people getting in touch, desperate for help.
Is it something that you encountered a lot of when you were policing?
It is, but we would also see a worrying rise when people are suddenly in the home more than they ordinarily would, and that was sadly around the festive period, believe it or not.
Well, you know what, it's great to see police, charities, organisations reaching out and finding new ways to help people who are in these awful situations. And remember, details of organisations offering information and support with domestic violence are available at bbc.co.uk/action line, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 0800 888 809.
Now, though, it's time for a look at today's wanted faces, and we're going to start with Jack Mail, although he also uses the nickname Littles. The 29-year-old was due to attend court in Guildford in connection with drug dealing charges, but failed to turn up, and a warrant has been issued for his arrest. He's heavily tattooed with these on his neck and hand. He also has a diamond on his face, you can see here. Police believe Mail may have changed his appearance, possibly covering the tattoos and shaving or colouring his hair. He has links to Surrey, Croydon, Purley and Sussex, in particular to Brighton. Next is 31-year-old Ahmed Farah, but you may know him as Reggie. Police want to question him in connection with the murder of a 21-year-old man in Sheffield in 2018. He has links to Cardiff, Birmingham, London and Sheffield. This here is 51-year-old Adam Dixon. He was due in court in connection with an attack in which 2 men were stabbed, but he didn't turn up and a warrant has been issued for his arrest. He has a tattoo of the letter A on his right bicep and a large scar on his back. He has links to Darlington, County Durham and also Amsterdam. And finally for today we have Ademir Tahir, although he also uses the name Akin. He failed to turn up to court in connection with an allegation of rape. He's originally from northern Cyprus, but now has links to Beckenham, Croydon and central London, as well as Middlesex. So if you think you know where any of these men are, please do get in touch using the details on screen.
Next, detectives in Northampton need your help after a robbery at a bank in the town earlier this year. At around 10 to 11 in the morning on Tuesday, the 18th of February, a man went into the Barclays Bank in the Drapery area of the town. He patiently waited and waited in the queue for a number of minutes before walking up to the cashier. Detectives say he then handed over a note demanding cash from the tills and told the petrified staff member not to press any alarms. He then calmly left the bank with around £6,000 in cash. Now today, for the very first time, detectives are revealing an image of the note that was handed over in the robbery, and they're really keen to hear from anyone who recognises the handwriting or can name the man who handed that note over. Remember, the robbery took place on Tuesday, the 18th of February at just before 11 o'clock in the morning. So do you recognise this man? If so, get in touch on the usual numbers. Police are very keen to speak to him.
Now, across the country, staff and volunteers from St John Ambulance would normally have spent the summer providing vital medical support at events and festivals, but the pandemic meant most of these were cancelled. But that doesn't mean those volunteers took a back seat. Far from it, in fact. Richard Lee, you're the Chief Operating Officer at St John Ambulance, and it has been quite a few months for you as well.
It's been the biggest mobilisation of St John Ambulance ever. Since March, we've provided almost 200,000 hours of support to the NHS in ambulances, hospitals and communities. We've thrown the entire weight and resources of the organisation behind the NHS for this period.
You really, really have done such amazing work. And some of that work involves first aid training, which you've done for years and years and years. But COVID has meant some big changes. What are they?
So the main change is around CPR and making sure that we do CPR differently in a COVID-safe world. We want people to do CPR when it's needed. So historically, if we'd come across somebody like this collapsed in the street, we would have given them a shake, we'd have said, hello, hello, can you hear me? And if they didn't reply to that, we'd have shouted for help, and then we'd have checked the patient was breathing by putting our ear next to their nose and mouth.
OK, so that's something that you're not advising at the moment.
We don't want to do that now. What we want to do is, once we've given somebody a shake, hello, hello, can you hear me? If they're not responding, what we really need to do is start CPR. So what we're taking is we're going to open the patient's clothing. For an adult patient like this, we're going to look at their chest, we're going to find the midpoint of their breastbone, we're going to put our hands on and we're going to start CPR.
So before you would do that, if obviously you're not going to put your ear to them, is there any other way to see if they are breathing that's safe?
So if the patient's chest is moving or they've got signs of life, we would say put them in the recovery position and call an ambulance.
OK, so the chest isn't moving, no sign of life, what would we then do?
So we're going to start doing chest compressions. We're going to do them at a rate of 100 to 120 a minute, pushing down on this patient's chest for about 5 centimetres. And we're going to do them like this. And this is the sort of rate and depth that we need to achieve on an adult patient.
Now, ordinarily, what you would do is a number of those chest compressions, you would then stop, put your ear to the patient, or also give them mouth-to-mouth. Now, is that something that you would absolutely advise you don't do at the moment?
That's right, Raf. So what we're saying during the pandemic is just do hands-only CPR like this. Push hard and fast, down for about 5 centimetres, at a rate of between 100 and 120 compressions a minute. Dial 999 and tell the ambulance service what's happening.
And something else that's very important, and you want to make sure that people are aware, there are defibrillators around, and people should be looking for one of those when this is happening.
Absolutely. This patient's chance of survival is reducing by 10% per minute until they're given a shock by a defibrillator. Okay. So find your nearest community defibrillator and be ready to use it. OK, Richard, you can stop there, but it's hard work, isn't it? 120 beats a minute, that's what you need to be doing, and hopefully it could save a life. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You and your team have done an amazing job, especially in such a tough time. Thanks, Rav.
Now, of course, alongside emergency medical teams, we know that if the worst should happen, that our police forces take care of us. But who looks after them when the physical and mental demands of the job start to take their toll? Well, celebrating 130 years service this year is Police Rehabilitation Centre Flint House in Oxfordshire. And just before lockdown, we spent a day there to find out how they help keep police officers ready for whatever the job might throw at them.
Being a police officer can be a tough job. When trouble flares, they often find themselves in harm's way. And any injuries can mean they're unable to continue their regular duties, putting the entire force under strain. This year marks the 130th anniversary of the UK's first ever police convalescent home. In 1988, the charity responsible opened Flint House as a rehabilitation centre, providing treatment for officers who have been injured, whether on or off duty. The charity is funded predominantly by donations and voluntary contributions from police who attend. Inspector Fiona Partridge is just one of over 3,000 officers who come to Flint House each year. This is her second visit.
The first time I came to Flint House was just after 2000 when I injured my knee. I suffered 2 injuries in a very short space of time, which were as a result of injuries in the execution of my duty, which is a long way round of saying they were assaults essentially. But more recently, I tripped up when I was out running. So I sustained quite a serious fracture to my shoulder.
Open to both serving and retired officers, the tailor-made treatments they receive are designed for them to get the most out of their 2-week stay.
Really try and straighten that arm.
I'm trying.
We are now working predominantly on strengthening. Her range of movement is a lot better, and there's still some bits we need to fine-tune. Good, just a little bit more lift through there, that's it. And then pushing away. Her pain is much more manageable, but she still gets the odd flare-up, and so we just need to load her progressively so we don't cause any more trouble to the shoulder. And you want to keep the left side of your body the same length as your right side.
So the treatment I'm having at the moment is quite varied. It ranges from having treatment on a machine that's designed to help you build muscle.
Good.
To pain relief through acupuncture.
And it's not just the physical injuries that staff at Flint House helps to treat, but the mental ones too.
It is fair to say that the job of a police officer can be really mentally and physically demanding. So having a dedicated resource like this is hugely important to give them the sort of intensive physiotherapy and space and time that they need to heal.
Good, and swap around. We have a lot of different injuries that come through our doors. We do get some of the more serious injuries where people have been involved in perhaps accidents at work. Sometimes people that have been involved in car accidents, and they might have a number of injuries that we have to work on, so that can take a little bit longer with their rehab as well.
Because you can be taken out of your home environment and the workplace for 2 whole weeks, you can achieve in that period of time far more than you would ever be able to do going to private physio at home.
Having that time to heal is key to tackling officers' injuries. And the regime at Flint House allows them to completely focus on kick-starting their recovery and getting back on the beat.
It's very rewarding working with patients here. The amount of progress they can make in 2 weeks is great. Yeah, it's why we do our job, really.
For Fiona, she'll soon be back on duty with the Met Police.
It's my last day here and I'll be going home tomorrow. I think it's fair to say I feel in a much better place than when I arrived. And, you know, I'm really glad to have had the opportunity to come here.
Such important work there, and with me on video call from Flint House now is their physiotherapy manager, Ian Barron. Ian, I just want to say, first of all, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us, because you and the team have got a busy day ahead of you, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a big day for us. We've got our first patients back on site, which is really important. We had lots of different guidelines that we had to adhere to get to this point. We're not only a healthcare facility, we have to adhere to guidelines of a gym, a swimming pool, a restaurant, a bar and a hotel. So lots of different things for us to consider to get here, but we're really looking forward to it.
Definitely lots to think about. So how did you and the team manage during lockdown?
Well, during lockdown, we had 450 patients that we were still needing to see. 150 of those got sent home on the day of lockdown. So we felt that we had a necessity to be able to put ourselves out there. So we initially started with live YouTube classes that a rehab therapist ran, and the physio was online to answer any questions. And then we've developed that into a virtual one-to-one rehab service where we're currently treating 310 police officers virtually, as well as welcoming those that are coming today.
That's fantastic. It's really thinking of new, innovative ways of working, isn't it? So 130 years on, Ian, what does the future of Flint House look like?
Well, the foreseeable future, with COVID still around, the government guidelines still state that virtual rehab should be your first point of call. So we're going to continue to do that. It has lots of benefits where we can see our patients a lot sooner than what we could before. When that is no longer meeting their needs, we will then get them in to do the face-to-face rehab on site. It's really important that the police officer's job is a really tough job, and it's really important that we're there for them to look after them so that they can look after everybody else.
Well, Ian, I don't want to take up too much of your time, so good luck with today and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Time now for a look at what's been coming in on the calls, texts and emails. Already getting some good information through on today's cases, but I do want to quickly update you on a case we featured before here on Crimewatch Roadshow, the murder of 74-year-old David Brickwood in his home in Abington in Northampton. David was found stabbed and beaten in the house in the early hours of the 26th of September 2015. Well, detectives tell us that a 26-year-old man from the Forest Gate area of London was arrested and charged in connection with his death last month. They do believe a number of people were involved, though, and would like to hear from anyone who has any information on what happened that night. Michelle.
But officers still need to hear from anyone with information about the murder 10 years ago of Colin Hughes. If you do have any information on that case, do get in touch. And that's all for today, but we'll be back tomorrow when I'll be in the driving seat, literally. Join us to find out how it went when I was put through training with the RNLI, including learning how to drive a lifeboat. I can promise you, Rob, it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, I look forward to watching that. For more details about the crimes on today's programme, do go to our website. But before we go, here's another look at this morning's wanted faces. If any of them look familiar to you, then pick up the phone and tell us where they are. Remember, the phone lines will be open until 11 o'clock this morning, but you can text or email us anytime.
We'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:15 a.m. Until then, take care.